they have all these draft picks coming up. And do you want Howie making these picks, really? This is so important to the future of the franchise. There's a real good chance they're going to be drafting what they hope will be a franchise quarterback this year, in addition to a couple of other really key pieces.
Jeff gave me the answer. We've got Les Bowen. It looks like he's almost ready for broadcast purposes. I will put him the same question that I just asked to Jeff Kerr. Les, good to see you. Thanks for hopping on board. What is the identity of the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, they don't have one. That's one of their main problems right now, Jody. Offensively or defensively, they don't have an identity. I'm really struck by the fact that defensively, and I don't think there's so much focus in the fan base about running the ball and stuff like that. This defense, okay, their two best players are Fletcher Cox and Darius Slay. I don't think either of those players feels he's being used optimally. You know, they're trying to run a scheme that is pretty much the opposite of what their talent suggests they should be doing. They can't stop anything defensively. They have no, personality defensively. Offensively, their identity is, let's see if Jalen can make a play here somehow. Dallas Goedert was supposed to have this big coming out party with Zach Ertz gone. And, the first drive, he gets a big, long completion. And then he got two more catches the rest of the day. They just don't have anything they can hang their hat on other than Hurts scrambling around offensively. And they have nothing they can hang their hat on defensively. It's a mess.
Les, is there anything positive you can take with this football team right now? It just feels like there's nothing we can say about this current roster where we're like, oh, they can build around this guy.
No, that's the real problem. There are people that want to be, let's be calm. We didn't think they'd be very good, blah, 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 blah. That's all true. But we thought we would see progress. We thought we would see people develop. Jalen Hurts isn't any better than he was last season if he's as good. And you get, toward the end of yesterday's game, you had Jonathan Vilma going on and on about, oh, it's only his 11th start. Well, that would be great if it was like a little bit better than his second start or his third start, but it isn't. It's worse, and that's a huge problem if you ask me. There's nobody really, even Devontae Smith, Hurts keeps throwing the ball behind him and they keep calling those drops. I don't think that's helping Devontae Smith a lot. I don't see who's developing here. Mailata had a rough day. I think his knee is still not right. And he was moving around, left tackle, right tackle. Where is he now? No, there's not. Jeff, that's a very good question. There's nobody developing anything on this team right now.
And that's a fair critique on the coaching staff on both sides of the ball. So I agree with both of you guys on that one. You talked about Hurts and the fact that, yes, he started some games last year, and you could legitimately use that as a comp from from last year to this year. And we're not seeing near enough progress. How much are you putting on him? This is a question that we ask on a weekend basis these days, Les. He himself has issues, and you can watch the plays develop and see where he might make a decision that could have been made differently. But right now, the Eagles system to me stinks. The play calling stinks. It got supposedly Doug Peterson fired because he did such a lousy job play calling last year. Well, I don't think Nick Sirianni can hold a candle to Doug Peterson as of right now in play calling. How do you evaluate Jalen Hurts when the play calling is as questionable as it has been this year?
That too is a good question, Jody, and that's the same thing we ran into with Wentz. Last year we were having the same type of conversation then in terms of the quarterback. How do you evaluate him when what they're trying to do doesn't seem like it has any chance of working? It's hard. I don't. Maybe that is a huge problem here. I don't know the answer to that. I think one thing that struck me yesterday. So Miles Sanders goes down. Clearly, they had planned for the first time all year to really use Miles Sanders a lot running the ball. He goes down, and their initial idea was to keep running, but to run Kenny Gainwell between the tackles, which, that's not what Kenny Gainwell does well. You saw on that first touchdown what Kenny Gainwell does well. And they finally came back to that play late in the second half. The throw across the middle where he used his speed and ran away from people. Why in the world? I mean, somebody reminded them they had Boston Scott eventually, and they got him in for a few carries inside. It didn't really work very well because Boston Scott is not Miles Sanders. They don't have a back. They have Jordan Howard sitting on the practice squad. They could have had him active for this game and maybe been able to run between the tackles a little bit. But, the adjustments don't come. That's the biggest thing about the offense. That's the point I'm trying to make is if somebody does something they're not expecting or if something doesn't work the way they're expecting it to, it takes them forever to sort of sort out, how they want to respond. And it's worse than it's ever been in that regard, I think.
One of my biggest concerns, Les, it's not Howie Roseman in general right now, but you got Carson Wentz who did not want to be. He, whatever his reasoning was, he just did not want to be in Philadelphia anymore. He got his way, got to Indianapolis, good for him. Deshaun Watson don't want to come here either. That's pretty well known now. Does anybody want to come here? Like, this is not a healthy franchise to play for, and you got two guys who flat out said no.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I don't know how to evaluate that really. With Deshaun Watson, I just can't imagine bringing him here, anyway.
It's a bad PR move.
Whatever he thinks or wants. I think in general, the franchise is still pretty well regarded in terms of the way it's run. It's not, they pay people. It's not a place where players don't get their money or it's not a tiny market in the middle of nowhere. But the bigger issue with Howie Roseman is they have all these draft picks coming up. And do you want Howie making these picks, really? This is so important to the future of the franchise. There's a real good chance they're going to be drafting what they hope will be a franchise quarterback this year, in addition to a couple of other really key pieces. Has Howie shown you that he's the guy to make that judgment? Boy, that's a tough one for me. Howie's done some good things over his tenure. Obviously, they did win the Super Bowl, and there were some strokes of genius involved in that particular off season for him. But overall, you look at like 10 years with Howie here, and there's been a lot more lows than there have been highs, and a lot more huge mistakes than huge home run acquisitions or drafts. I don't think most other cities he would not still be the general manager at this point. I mean, I think when Doug Peterson got fired, a lot of places that would have been it for the whole, player operation. And obviously it wasn't, and we don't know what it would take to make that the case.
All right, Les, I want to follow up on something you said and get you to expound on it a little bit. You said that Deshaun Watson would not be a play for you. because you just question his character because of all these alleged incidents, because you just...
Yeah, that's just a terrible, and you know what the atmosphere in our culture is in 2021, to bring somebody in who's, I think, credibly accused by many, many women of gross misconduct, however it plays out legally. Uh, Looking at the image Jeff Lurie has tried to project of his franchise and his own values, I think that would be just ridiculous. Uh, I mean, if there's some sort of like crazy, you know, TV miniseries conclusion of this where Deshaun Watson is completely innocent and this is a huge conspiracy or something, then yeah. But otherwise, no. I don't want that guy here. I don't want him quarterbacking the Eagles. The only other path would be if somehow Deshaun Watson said, you know, I have a mental illness or something and gets...
Oh, he's going down the Ben Simmons road,
Yeah.
huh?
Oh boy.
If he gets treatment, apologizes, you know, pledges to spend time, you know, working on behalf of sexual assault survivors or something, I don't know. But in the present situation, just to say, oh, we got this guy. Some women said he raped them, but we want to win some football games here. How in the world would that ever work out? I mean, really, do you guys see that?
Well, BLG put out an interesting point too. Just the attitude. Like I remember too. It was in August. You know, I think he was in his like hooded sweatshirt or something, and he went to like 2 or 3 reporters. Why are you filming me? That's Houston. Can you imagine what Philadelphia is going to be like with those guys?
Yeah. That's a very good point, Jeff. I mean, that's a secondary consideration, but an important one. This is, you know, this isn't some college town where people are just going to say, okay, he's our guy now. You know, it would be incredibly problematic, and I don't see it happening.
Les, I know this goes back to before my time, maybe even before your time, the fact that the Eagles have, as an organization, and this is over different ownership, certainly different general manager, it spans decades, that the Eagles have devalued linebackers. It's the last time they took a linebacker first round, Jerry Robinson. A whole bunch of the people watching the show right now, we're not even born yet. That's how long ago it is. We have to go back.
Including myself.
Including Jeff Kerr. Is this the year that they finally go, yeah, maybe we need to actually upgrade our linebacker. We need to put a little bit more emphasis on linebacker, be it either draft or free agency, spending, whatever it is? Or are they just going to continue to say, no, we're telling you, we're smarter than everybody else. Anybody who's spending money on linebackers is making a mistake in the NFL in 2022. It's just so frustrating to watch the other team go down the field 10 yards at a time, stick it into the end zone. They don't have any playmakers at linebacker right now. Sorry, Davion Taylor, you're flashing nothing that makes me believe you're that guy. Will this be the offseason the Eagles finally say, all right, linebacker is an area that we need to address?
Well, if Jonathan Gannon remains the defensive coordinator, they just about have to really address that because, like I said, he seems to have a scheme that is predicated on linebacking, which is just a ridiculous thing to bring in here with the personnel that they have. But I don't know if Jonathan Gannon is going to be the defensive coordinator. Rolling back a little bit, when this idea first began to grate on fans' perceptions was back when they let go of Jeremiah Trotter. The first year I was on the beat, that was like the first story I covered in 2002, spring of 2002. They franchised Jeremiah Trotter. He was very upset by this. He thought he deserved a long-term contract. He went down to NovaCare and made a scene. Eventually, they just released him, and he signed with Washington. Eventually, he came back and helped the Eagles get to a Super Bowl. But that was the genesis of this. In the 2000s, they were kind of at the forefront of NFL thinking. They were kind of right that linebacker wasn't, especially the big, strong, run-stopping linebacker, was not a key element of a championship team very often in that time. But the game kind of runs cycles, as you guys know. And in fact, I think linebacking is more important currently than they give it credit for being, especially if you have a defensive coordinator who wants to funnel everything, make everything the linebackers, the linebackers have to stop the run. The linebackers have to stop the pass over the middle. If you're going to make that the calling card of your defense, then you'd better have some good ones for sure. And, this guy had Darius Leonard in Indianapolis. So, yeah, if they keep Jonathan Gannon, they're going to have to do that. But, again, Jonathan Gannon, to me, he is the much more than Sirianni. I mean, how you come in here with that scheme, a good coach matches the scheme to the talent that he has in front of him. And to look at Darius Slay and Fletcher Cox and find ways to minimize them, I don't know that I want that guy to be my defensive coordinator. I'm pretty sure I don't. So I don't know what's going to happen with them in linebacking. It's been a fascinating subject through the years. I think I mentioned to you guys, I actually did a story back when I was just writing for the Daily News. This was probably more than 10 years ago, close to 10 years ago. Before the draft, you're always looking for stuff to do. So I actually called up Jerry Robinson and talked to him about having been the last linebacker the Eagles drafted in the first round. He had no idea. He was incredulous. He was stuck in California. It was like, what? But that was, and I think it might have been like around 2011, 2012 that I did that. And you could write the same story.
Yeah.
Call Jerry back this year. Go, hey, Jerry, they still haven't taken a linebacker in the first round.
Yeah, do a follow-up. I mean, it's, and linebackers aren't, I mean, if you're drafting like top 10, linebackers generally aren't a great value, but that's not really, look at Micah Parsons this year.
Yep.
And the value he has given that Dallas defense. Is he a linebacker in the Jeremiah Trotter, 265 pound sense? No, but he's all over the field. He's a safety. He's a linebacker. He's a pass rusher, and that is part of modern day football, and I hope the Eagles realize that.
Yeah. Speaking of draft prospects, Les, I say the Eagles get this Dolphins pick. It looks like it's definitely going to be top 5 the way the Dolphins are. There's a defensive end that I watch him every week. I want him on this football team. I know people on this site have heard of him. The Kayvon Thibodeau. I want this guy keeping green on. That's how bad I want him on the Eagles. Like, could the Eagles, if they get that number 1, number 2 pick, I mean, he may go number 1, but you can't pass on a guy like that, right? A franchise-changing defensive end. I mean, Washington's not getting it with Chase Young, but this guy looks for real.
Well, I think Chase Young is pretty much for real. I don't think they've done a good job around Chase Young, and maybe they need to do some things to maximize what he does well. But your point, do they have their quarterback?
That's what I'm worried about.
That's the problem here. I don't know. Everybody says these quarterbacks that everybody's looking at before the season aren't doing well. Spencer Rattler certainly has been benched. It's so hard to see with quarterbacks who's going to be good. And usually the guys picked 1 or 2 aren't, usually there's somebody farther down the draft who does better. I don't know. But if they don't have a quarterback, that's going to be a huge consideration with that first pick. If Jalen Hurts isn't the answer long term, they're going to have to really look long and hard first at if there is somebody that they're certain can be a franchise quarterback with that first pick. After that, then you look at other positions. I don't know. I mean, they're going to have more than one first-round pick. Maybe you think you can get your quarterback later. Maybe there's a guy you like that isn't, I don't know where that guy from Jerry Falwell's school is going to go. It's I don't know what they're going to do. But, yeah, that would be a great pick. You're right. That guy would be a great first pick if they don't need a franchise quarterback or if they can get one some other way.
Yeah, a quick follow-up to that, Les. So this is the tough part I have about Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow, but I don't think he's Sam Darnold or Davis Mills either. So what do you need to properly evaluate this guy over the last 10 games?
I'd like to see him make some throws that aren't, 10-yard throws. I would like to see him stay in the pocket a little bit and find a second or third option once in a while. I would like to see, they kind of have taken the RPOs away from him because he couldn't. His idea was he'd just keep the ball every time.
Often, yes.
I want to see him learn to run those effectively. There's a lot that I want to see from him, and I haven't seen any of it yet, really, frankly. What you see is grit. You see character. You see, accountability. You see toughness. And those are all wonderful things, but at quarterback, unless you're making the throws accurately and going to all sections of the field, those other things are just kind of, beside the point. And that's kind of where we are. He looks more and more like the kind of guy that's going to be in the league a long time, but he's not going to be a long time starter anywhere. There's a lot of guys like that they kind of around and they start for a while here and they start for a while there, but they're mostly backup type or, C-level quarterbacks. And I hope I'm wrong about that for the Eagles' sake and for his sake, because he seems to be a great guy, really good person.
So he's Ty Detmer.
Like I said, you just don't see improvement, and that's a real stopping point for me. That's profound at this point.
All right, so Les Bowen, let's solve the Philadelphia Eagle quarterback problems. You and I right now, we're going to do a little role play, okay? I'm going to be Chris Greer. You're going to be Howie Roseman. Let's say the Miami Dolphins can come to an agreement with the Houston Texans and they're going to get Deshaun Watson. That makes Tua Tagovailoa very available. I'm Chris Greer calling you Howie Roseman, and I'm going to offer you Tua Tagovailoa, and all you have to give me is a future second-round conditional pick. Now, I just took Tua at number, what was it, 6, 5, 6?
It was 5.
It was 5, and Herbert was 6. I thought it was 6, 7. If you tell me it was 5, 6, I believe you, Jeff Kerr. You're better at these things than me. I'm potentially going to get only a second-round pick 3 years later for a guy who's taken at number 5. It's your second-round pick next year, but if Tua in the 2022 season plays, we'll go 85% of the snaps. Carson Wentz only has to play 75. I'll take 85, but if he's that good for you, yeah, you got to give me a 1 then next year in 2022. But it's a conditional 2 that can jump up to a 1. You got any interest in Tua Tagovailoa? Because the quarterbacks coming out this year, there's no Joe Burrow. There's no Trevor Lawrence in this year's draft class. Oh, by the way, we're getting Deshaun Watson. You're not getting him, Howie Roseman. You think Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in Philadelphia? I don't think so. You think that Russell Wilson's going to end up in Philadelphia? I don't think so. I'm giving you a legit choice here. Do you like Tua Tagovailoa enough to pull a trigger on that deal?
Well, see, that's the problem, Jody. The deal can be as attractive as you want to make it. But unless you're sold on the player being the answer for you, it doesn't matter what you're getting him for. And I'm not. I mean, I watched a good bit of that. I was watching the Red Zone yesterday at 1 o'clock, like most people, I think, because that we had one game available to us in our market, and it was, the Bengals-Ravens, which was an interesting game, but not two teams that I care a whole lot about. So I was watching Red Zone, and they showed a lot of that Miami game. And, he made a terrible turnover. He did some good things, but I'm not big on Tua.
You're not a Tua guy. All right.
He has one bad one
again. Yeah, he has a better arm. Maybe there's more to work with there. Maybe you think, okay, we've got the coaching staff that can really develop this guy. I sure don't see that right now. But,
if they were some Miami's.
Yeah, ask yourself, why are they trading for Deshaun Watson? It's not so much about where they took this guy. It's like, what is he in the NFL? And I don't see him being any sort of great answer. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really do a lot of film study of quarterbacks and, all that stuff. I could be totally wrong, but off the top of my head, that does not excite me.
Fair enough. I'm a Tua guy. That's why I brought it up.
Okay.
And
All right.
if it were the other way around and you were Chris Geary and I were Howie Roseman, I would say done deal. Now, you're right. Tua has not blown anybody away with his performance to this point. He wasn't the reason they lost the game yesterday. He stuck it in the end zone with 2 minutes to go to give him the lead, and the defense let old Matty Ice run down the field and get the game-winning field goal. So I still think I'm still a big Tua Tagovailoa fan. So, yes, I would do something like that. All right. Fun stuff. I know you used to love it, getting in there after the fact, day after, a couple days after. What's Nick Sirianni's narrative going to be? We know after the game yesterday, he said, we were not good enough. Yeah, put it on me. He might have pointed at the defensive coordinator, too. Yeah, we weren't good enough on defense. Has he got anywhere left to turn with an answer for this week, leading into a game that they should win, basically have to win against the Lions this week? What are we going to hear out of Nick Sirianni this week, Les?
Boy, that's a real good question. I've been thinking more about what people should ask him. I was, when you're used to being in these press conferences and you watch them from afar, you're a little frustrated sometimes. I would have really hammered that you had extra time to prepare, and this is what happened, thing yesterday. But obviously that's going forward. That's not really a narrative. What's he going to say? We have to be better up front. Maybe that's where he's going to put it. I didn't think either line, was any good yesterday, and both lines should have been competitive against the team they were playing. We have to get some stability on our offensive line and get guys settled into roles. I don't know. It's a 17-game season. We still have plenty of time to, we need to get this turned around now, but the season's not over. I don't know what his narrative is, really. It's, that was, like you said, they've had at least 3 losses this year where the final score looks a lot better than the game looked. And that's something he's going to have to own up to at some point. They're getting, garbage points. Everybody who really knows the league and watches the league knows what's really going on. You're getting killed by most of these teams. Since that opener where everything looked so great, the only game they've won was Carolina. And Sam Darnold, who was benched yesterday, had to throw 3 interceptions, and they had to block a punt in the fourth quarter to win that game by 2 points. It's somehow Sirianni is going to have to come to grips with where they really are, and they're not like in there, fighting for the playoffs or anything like that. They are at the very bottom of the barrel. I thought when the Giants won yesterday and looked a lot better against the Panthers than the Eagles did in beating them by 2 points, and Washington actually played a decent game, lost to Aaron Rodgers, but went to Lambeau and, did not get blown out. the Eagles are right at the bottom of this division, as far as I'm concerned, along with Washington and New York. And it's a coin flip. They're not, people were saying, oh, they could, they'll win those games. You'll have to show me that. They need to come to grips with where they are, and, huge changes on defense with scheme. I think offensively, they've got to figure out how to make Jalen Hurts effective. And I don't know what the answer to that is.
As you said, the Eagles need to figure out where they're at. I can tell you where we're at. We're basically out of time. Les, as always, a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on. We're going to continue to tap into you, bud. You're doing quite well with your downtime. You still have your finger on the pulse of the Eagles, and we thank you for sharing with us today. Appreciate it, bud.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Les Bowen here with us on Birds 365. All right, JK, Jody Mack, hanging with you. Come back, put a bow on the show. We'll wrap up a tough Monday edition of Birds 365.